Hi kiddos, Mrs. Cat here. For the next 7 weeks, I'm going to be helping you with any and all things math. So if you have any questions on the math packet or math work, you can email me or talk to me, or you can ask any of your homeroom teachers if you'd rather talk to them. Every day I'm going to post a video to try to help you with some of the things that we do in class that maybe your parents didn't do or that are a little bit trickier, just to get you started. For the next little bit, I know not all of you don't have your packets and you won't until probably Wednesday. So just to keep everybody on the same pace, I'm going to start the videos, but I'm going to do a lot more talking than I normally will just to get you started. To start with, I want to show you some of the things that are in your packet so you know what you're up against once you get it, or if you already have it, you can start to break it down so that you're ready to go when we all have our packets on Thursday. So the first thing you're going to see is a page that looks like this in your math packet. That has the schedule for the week. It's all of the math work for the whole week. And it goes through Mondays. Here's all Monday stuff, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I will get a video out to you Monday through Thursday. Whatever's on Fridays will always be up to you to do on your own because most of it is a review from the week. If you look on Monday, one of the first things you'll see is a number talk, just like we do in class to get things started. All of these will be review topics, so hopefully you guys have some great thoughts on them. If you look at today's, the very first thing for today, it says, what is the value of the underlying number? Hopefully you guys remember that a number like 7 isn't always worth 7. Depending on where it is in a number, it might be worth 7, 70, 700, or something very small like 7,000. So if you look at this first one, I know it's kind of small on my screen, so I apologize, but if you look at the first one, it says 12,746. That 7 is the thing I'm looking at. It's a 7 in the hundreds place, so you guys know that that would then be worth 700. In this one, I'm looking at something where the number comes after a decimal, so we know that that number is going to be worth less than a whole, and it happens to be a 2 place values over. Anyone remember? Yep, 2 hundredths. In the third one, I've got a 7, 1 place to the right of the decimal. That puts it in the 10th spot, so it'll be worth 7/10. And the very last one, this is a great example of how two numbers may not be worth the same value. This has a 4 at the beginning and the end. I'm focused on the one at the end, which is 3 places after the decimal point, so it's worth 4 thousandths. This part right here is something that I'll get on once a week. I will pull out a class. Mondays for my kids, Tuesdays for Mrs. Wendell's, Wednesdays for Mrs. Malcolm's kids, and Thursdays are for Miss Foro's kids. I'll pull you guys on and we will do a live version of this that we will then share out to the other 3 groups so you guys can kind of participate and have conversations about that. The story problem, it says application problem. You guys know them better as model drawings. And there's a whole bunch of those, one for every day that we're apart. And I will help you get through the picture portion of that. The rest of it's on you because you know what to do. Fact practice and math with somebody will be for you to do. If you look in your packet, somewhere in there, there's a whole bunch of things that look like this. These are going to be your flashcards for the next few weeks to practice your basic facts with this fact practice. You do not need to fill in the spots. Those are blank on purpose because if I look at this, I should see a fact family here. And I have to think to myself, if this is the answer and I'm doing this times this, how many groups of this do I need to make 6? You guys know that's 2. So if I was doing this as a flashcard, I'd want the answer 2. But on a card like this time I have the groups of and how many are in the group, but I don't have an answer. So I'm going to say 2 groups of 4 is 8. So I'm looking for the product in this particular problem. If you guys want to get a head start, those of you that have your packets, a great thing to do would be to cut these out, pull the whole bundle of them out, and just cut them into big chunks. And they'll serve for your fact practice pieces. So for Monday, it happens to say practice multiplication facts, 0 and 1s, use the flashcards. So I would go through and find anything where one of the groups is 0 or 1 and practice those. You guys know that with 0s and 1s, the answers are pretty fast because 0 groups of anything is still no groups or 0. And one group of anything is just however many are in that group. So one group of 7, or 1 times 7, is 7, because I only have the one group. But you guys can still practice those and see how fast you can get. Maybe play a game with that. This decimal pairs game, you notice we play that all week. On Monday, I'll show you the directions and things like that. Your job will just be to then play the game all week. If you are looking for it, it looks like this in your packet. It's in a different section. It has this, and then 2 pages that kind of look like this. Again, if you want to get a head start on this, I'll show you how to play tomorrow, but for tonight, a good job would be to get them all cut out. Parents, before, you can have the kids cut them out, but on Facebook, I'll post an answer key for you so you know what pairs go together. Which takes us to the story problem, or the model drawing. In your packet, you have something that looks kind of like this. It has, basically, it looks a lot like the one Mrs. Wendell made for us. I think we all have them in our classroom. I know my kids do. Where you kind of check off, yep, I've done this step, this step, this step. And then it kind of has the paragraph model down here. You have the exact same thing, but instead of a paragraph model, at this point in the year, you should pretty much know what we're looking for and be able to write those out. So, just to get you started, and parents, this one's kind of for you so you can see what all the pieces of this really are talking about. You would then take this checklist and this story problem and go through the steps. Step 1 says read the entire problem and put in the chunks. The kids know that that means every time there's a new piece of information, I need to mark it out in my thing so that when my problem is done, I know I've addressed every piece of this story problem. So for the first week, those of you that don't have it, it says Farmer Jim keeps 12 hens in every coop. If Farmer Jim has 10 coops, how many hens does he have in all? So if I was going back through this, I know the fact that he has 12 hens in every coop is a piece of information I need to pay attention to. The fact that he has 10 coops is something else I need to pay attention to. And the question I'm working with is how many hens does he have in all? Okay. And I know 5th graders that a lot of you probably have already solved this in your head. But remember, we practice these on problems that are a little bit easier so that when we get to the trickier problems, we know what to do. First step, if I was filling this out at home, I could then say, okay, I've done this. The next one says rewrite the question in sentence form with a blank space for an answer. So the question is asking me, how many hens does he have in all? So if I was going to answer that back to somebody, I would say, Farmer Jim has blank hens. I don't know yet how many hens he has because I haven't done the work to figure it out. So I'm just going to leave a spot for that right now and make sure that you put some sort of label in there so I know what it is I'm talking about when I read your answer. For the model drawings, this is the part parents you're probably not as familiar with. You first start out by deciding who and or what is involved in this problem. So in this case, I'm talking about Farmer Jim and his hens. So I'm going to draw a little starting line here because I haven't done any math yet, but I know I'm talking about Farmer Jim and his hens. So I know that any math that follows this is going to help me solve for this. There's this part. Now it says draw a unit bar. That is literally just a bar. We're going to end up breaking it up and doing some other things with it, but for right now, a bar is good enough. Now it says go back to the chunks that I have, those things I marked out in my question, and check off when each part is added into the adjusted unit bars and put in a question mark. The question mark in the end is going to tell me what piece of this puzzle I need to find. So if I'm looking at this bar now represents however many total chickens I have, or hens, sorry. And I know that he has 12 hens in a coop. So in this one coop, he's got 12 hens. And in another coop, he has 12 hens. There's this chunk. I also know that he has 10 coops. So he has a third coop with 12. And I could keep going on and on and on. But he's only going to have 10 coops with 12. There's that chunk. Now the question says, how many does he have in all? So my question mark needs to go where I'm going to find the total of this bar, which is at the end. The computation part is the part you're more familiar with. There's a lot of ways you could go about it. I could say, well, he's got 10 groups of 12, so 12, 12, 12, da 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 da, 10 times, and add them up for an answer. That's a choice. I could also recognize that I'm doing 12 groups of 10, or 10 groups of 12, depending on how you want to look at it, and multiply. Another great choice. There's a lot of things they could do to solve this problem. And then once they've decided how they want to solve the problem, they know a lot of great ways to solve that problem. I'm guessing most people are familiar with the traditional method, so I'll say 0 times 2 is 0, and 0 times 10 is 0. And because this is a 10, I know that I need to put in a placeholder to show that this is not a 1, it's a 10. And now I can say this will make for 2, this will make for 1, or 100, because it's really a 10 times 10. And that all added up is 120. So I kind of did a few steps here. I put in my chunk, I've adjusted it, I marked out my question, and now I've computed it and solved my problem. Step 7 says to put the answer into my question, and then down here it says to explain. So I knew my answer was 120. I go back up here and say that he has 120 hens. And down here is really just to explain everything I just showed you, which is where Mrs. Wendell's little helpful sheet here might get some of you started, and I can post a picture of this if you want. But your first sentence would say something about, first I drew your model bar. You could say I put in 10 spots because he has 10 in coops, or 12 in each coop, whichever. Then and it says to talk about the numbers, what you did. I knew it was going to have to be a multiplying or maybe adding, depending on how I solved it. Then I used this. I happen to use the traditional method to actually solve it out. Your kids know 4 different ways to do each kind of problem. I chose traditional. Finally, I found that Farmer Jim had 120 hens. That information would go right here. Okay, I know that that's a lot of things and you're getting a whole lot of stuff. So for the next few days, like I said, I'll get on and do the bulk of the work. And then starting later this week when we all have our materials, I'll start making the kids do a whole lot more. But for these first few, while we're all getting acclimated, I'll be sure to help out a lot. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to contact me. Kids, every day I'll post the videos onto your Google Classroom so that you can go back and watch them if you need to. Or those of you that don't have your packets, you can always go back in and fill them out if you want it for notes. Other than that, I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night, guys.